Oh, you must be broke. What? I'm just kidding, man. What's going on? How was your honeymoon? I appreciate you asking. It went really well. We both had a great time. Okay, that's what's up. All right, look, your wife's not here. Did you blow up your credit card? Nah, man, I didn't really use my credit card like that. I mean, yeah, a little bit, but I mean, it was worth it though. Okay, man, that's understandable. I just want to remind you though, you remember that goal, that financial goal you set at the beginning of this year? I don't know if you remember, I'll just put it right here. You said you want to have a net worth of at least $0. And everybody out there understands that's not the easiest thing to do. And we also understand that that might include bringing that debt down and bringing that savings account up. And in this honeymoon, you might have brought that debt up and that savings account down. I don't know what you did. I'm not in your business. Oh, okay, I get it. All right, my bad. But for real, the question is, how are you planning on taking care of this? Like, which one are you want to take care of first? Your debt or your savings? Honestly, man, that's a good question. So in this video, we're gonna talk about which one is more important between paying off your debt or saving a little bit more. So let's get started. So before you decide which one of these two deserves more of your money, we gotta be in what I'll call the setup phase. And the first part of that setup phase is to make sure that you have an emergency fund. An emergency fund sounds like what it is. It's the amount of money that you have over to the side in a savings account for emergencies. And the minimum amount you wanna shoot for an emergency fund is about $1,000. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you take into consideration that last year in January, over 50% of people didn't have $1,000 in their savings account, and this year, 32% of people don't even have over $100 in their savings account, it is a lot more than it seems. Granted, that is a fairly small sample size of people, but still fairly alarming. Eventually, you want to try to grow that amount even further so you can cover what's called your living expenses. Those are your monthly expenses on the most important things that you need to basically survive. And ideally, you want to have a goal to at least shoot for 3 months of living expenses in that savings account. Having an emergency fund not only will prep you for those sudden situations that require a lot of money, but it'll also keep you from increasing your debt when those emergencies happen. Now, assuming you have an emergency fund already and it has at least $1,000 in it, the next thing you want to do is understand the types of debt you have, how much you owe, and the interest behind those debts. I did learn that there is such thing as good debt and bad debt. Good debt is debt that can help you build your net worth over time potentially, and bad debt just won't. There are 2 forms of good debt that I can think of. One is student loan debt, which I know a lot of former students like myself actually hate, but it can be considered good debt if the interest under that debt is low, maybe 3 to 4, maybe even 5%. And considering what you went to school for and how much that career can pay you on average, it can be so much that it makes that amount you owe in student loan debt just very minimal, so you can pay that off in a shorter period of time. It essentially pays itself off multiple times. Another form of good debt can be your mortgage if you own a home, because as you pay it, you build equity, and on top of that, the market itself can make your house even more valuable. So if you pay off half of your mortgage, but then the market allows your house to be valued twice as much as what you bought it for, then essentially you get the value of your house when you bought it back in cash, if I'm doing my math correctly. On the other hand, you have bad debt. Bad debt is anything with high interest, primarily credit cards. Now, if you have more good debt, then you're kind of in a more flexible situation. You have that opportunity just to put a little bit on your debt and put the rest of it towards your savings, whether it's an emergency fund or anything else you may be saving towards in the future. Otherwise, having more high interest debt like credit card debt can put you in another situation. Once you set up an emergency fund with at least $1,000 and you've looked at all of your debt, including the type of debt that you have, how much you owe on all of them, and the interest attached to each of them, you can start to gather an idea of which one is more important between paying off your debt or saving more. Now, a basic answer that you may get if you ask somebody, hey, which one is more important, is probably going to be, it depends on your situation, which is true. But I want to try to give you guys 3 scenarios of which one I would personally do depending on the balances of each. And I am, for the sake of this video, going to avoid if you're in a position to where all your debt is good debt, because as I said earlier, you might be in a bit of a more flexible situation. Scenario number 1, if your savings is higher than that bad debt. At this point, you're probably in a great position, at least between the 3 different situations, to where you can actually just put more of your money towards your debt, especially if you're in a position to where you have enough in your savings account to cover between 3 to 6 months worth of living expenses, maybe even more. That way, once you pay off that bad debt, you can continue to focus on your savings account, or if you have good debt, you can work on that, or just anything else you feel like doing. Scenario 2, if the balance on your bad debt is the same as the balance of your savings account. I would focus on my debt first, and a huge reason I would do that is because of the amount of money you could actually lose if you focus on your savings. I've talked a few times before on this channel about the high yield savings account with PNC Bank that I set up almost 4 months ago, and luckily the APY on that high yield savings account is about 4%, which is a little over 10 times the national average interest rate on a savings account. However, the average interest rate on a credit card is 20%. So that means in the case that the balances on my debt and the balances on my savings account are exactly the same, and the minimum amount I put on my credit cards, for example, and the minimum amount I put in my savings account are exactly the same, then I would lose 5 times more in interest on my credit cards or whatever other debt than I would actually make in interest on that high yield savings account. And that could be worse if the high yield savings account was actually a regular savings account with a lower interest rate, or a savings account with no interest, or just like in scenario 3, if my bad debt was even higher than my savings account. Now in this scenario, I think what you do is solely dependent on how much money you have in your savings account. If you're in a position to where you haven't built an emergency fund yet, then I would focus solely on that and at least put enough money towards paying the minimum off your debt until you reach at least $1,000 into your emergency fund, and then you can balance it out a little bit more. Now, if you have at least 1 month's worth of living expenses in your savings account, then you're probably in a situation like me where you're tempted to put all the money you would normally save into your debt. Right now, I save about $400 a month in my regular savings and my high yield savings, but after last month, when my wife and I turned up and had a great time on the beach, my debt shot up. So personally, I considered to stop saving for the time being and put that $400 on top of the minimum payments I already put on my debt towards my debt until I knock that out. But I decided to continue to save at least $100 towards my high yield savings account per month and put the remaining $300 towards my credit card debt on top of the minimum payments that I already put on there until I knock those down. So with that being said, maintaining your debt and your savings is like the foundation of achieving overall financial success in whatever way that means to you, whether it's achieving a net worth of $0 or retiring by the age of 40, or whatever goals you may want to achieve. Just make sure that before you get started with anything else, put pen to paper or fingers to keyboard onto Excel and write down all of your expenses and all of your sources of income. And maybe at that point, the answers to this question pertaining to you on which one's more important may start to jump out at you. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Which one would you pick between paying off your debt or saving a bit more, or which one have you picked and how did that turn out for you? But I appreciate you guys watching as always, and until next time, take care.